So hello friends, in this video we are trying to understand what is this methods represent in Qwik application. So to understand this we just have to go with this example, right? So what basically Qwik simply writes here that to provide a method to the store you must make them the QRL and QRLs and refers to the store with this like so. So simply as you go through this example, here you will see we have imported three things, right? So first one is the component, that is simply going to create this component. The second one is usestore, that is simply used to manage the state or a state in our application, right? For example, we had taken here two states. First one is that increment, and second one which you can see here is an it's an increment, right? So as you can see, this increment is nothing something which is not simply a variable, but as you can see it's a kind of function, right? It's a kind of function which basically changes the value of this count variable, right? So as you can see here we had defined, okay, the name of this key is increment, right? And this increment is not a variable, not some value, but it's a function, right? So here we had created a function, right? And after this function we had just mentioned here, okay, what this function returns. So this returns like this dot count. So what basically this represent, this basically target to this count value, right? This count value is being simply targeted by this, okay? So this dot count, but what is this basically represent? So this value is simply targets to our component, right? Our component. So basically this component, so whenever this refers, so it simply refers to this component, and then we refers to count. So in this component do we have this count variable, right? So usestore gives this information, okay, yes, we have the account variable. So where it is? Yeah, it is here, which is being managed by the usestore. Okay, that's great. So what should I do? Then it simply represent that you whatever the value of this count variable, you should add one more to it, right? So basically we had increment, we had implemented this increment, a kind of function, right? And we are managing this function in our state, right? But the one thing which is quite important here is whenever you try to use a method in our store, whenever you try to provide a method to our store, so method is simply means a function, okay? So whenever you're trying to provide a function to your store, you must change it into QRLs, okay? So how you had just changed this function to QRLs. So this QRLs is simply can be done just by simply using this $sign, okay? So whenever you use this $sign, as you can see here, we had used it here, right? So whenever you use this $sign, basically what this does, what basically it does, it basically simply breaks this part of your application, of your code, and into smaller chunk, and right, and this part and the part which you had just seen just after this $sign will only be fetched by our application when we clicked on this button. So why? This is because here, as you can see, as we just click on this button, it will trigger this state.increment, right? So when you click on this button, which is that increment button, right? As you can see here, I will show you this button, right? So as you just click on this button, it will trigger this function, and as this function is got trigger, it will go to the server and call for this data. So what is that data? So that this small piece of data, right? Where it just refers to this count, and after referring to this count, it will simply increase its value by 1, right? So if you are just willing to see it's working, so the main point which I again want to clear here is, whenever you have to change something into QRLs, right? So you have to use this $sign. So as you can see here, so we had changed this part into a QRLs. So QRLs simply means that you give instruction to your application, okay, break my code from here and only render this part of code whenever it is required. Okay, so at the first rendering of this component it is not required to fetch this data also. Okay, so basically what this gives you the advantage, it basically not fetch this function at the very initially, but at very initial page loading, so it reduces the time of that page load. Okay, so same is happening here. As you can see, we had used this $sign, and this $sign represent the whatever comes after this. We had simply this part will be called by our application when we click on this button. Okay, so this part of code is not there when we initially render this component. Okay, right. So as you can see, if you are just willing to see this example, how does it works? So let's go to our TSS application, and instead of having all this, I am just going to capture and just copy all this, right, and going to replace the code with here, right? Okay, so as you can see, now we have this increment button and this count button, and as I click on this button, as you can see, at initially the whole component, the whole data is rendered from the server, directly server. Okay, so it is not being computed or managed by our client side, right? So whatever you had seen in our application is simply up until now is managed by the server. But as I click on this increment button, as you can see, I just clicked and its value increases by 1. Now all of this function is being managed by our client side. Okay, now all of this function is managed at our client side, right? So now this functionality, this increment and all this is being managed at client level, right? So this is how basically this application works, and that is what I had just mentioned here. Is method. So method is nothing else but the function which we use in our JavaScript, right? So whenever we want to use some method, some function in our JavaScript, we should change this into the QRLs, and to change this into the QRLs, you just have to use the $sign. To use the $sign, we have to import this $sign from this builder/Qwik, builder/Qwik, right? And after doing this, and after all this, we can simply use this and break our large application into smaller chunks. Okay, so I think this video must had helped you to understand the concept of methods and this QRLs in our Qwik application. So let's see you in our next video. Till then, have a nice day and goodbye.